Playing online feels like you want to headbutt your monitor. Honestly, I feel like doing that most of the time, even when I'm not playing online. What hurts me more than netcode is lack of cross-platform. Oh, it's so frustrating. Fighting games suck online. Or do they? Well, it turns out fighting games don't actually have to suck online, but more than half the games that you do play online aren't fun to play because the game will kind of like chug and slow down because of what's called netcode. Now, whether that's a real word or not a real word doesn't really matter, but it does actually exist, the programming behind the game, that makes the game feel more smooth and play a little bit closer to what you experience offline. Now, that's a big topic, especially in 2020, because obviously a lot of us can't go to events where that's usually where people play fighting games, and that's where they thrive. At arcades, but then after the arcades died, people went to video game actual events to play in fighting game tournaments and local casual events. But a lot of people have genuinely quit the games that they love, the games that they spent hours and hours of their lives practicing, purely because the online experience is better in other games. So that's the question we've asked Twitter today, and it's this one here. You can see there's like 90 replies and 100 quote tweets. So let's go through as many of these as we possibly can, but obviously we're not going to go through all of them. The question I posed to Twitter was, what game did you quit purely because of netcode? Here we go, Grand Blue Versus. I'd really like to play more, but it feels mediocre, even with people from the same country sometimes. Another one for Grand Blue Versus, Absolute Hellscape Online. Simply Grand Blue Versus. And here's one that actually refers to a netcode update in a completely different game. This is the Slippy update, which came out earlier this year for Smash Bros. Now, a lot of fighting games use what's called delay netcode, and it just kind of waits until inputs come from the internet from the other player. But one of the hot topics right now is rollback netcode, where the game essentially, if possible, it doesn't wait for the inputs to actually arrive from the other player, but when it does finally arrive, it kind of looks back through the code, fixes, understands where the player is supposed to be, then it updates your character. Even if they're halfway through the motion, it'll update them to where they're supposed to be in the animation. And this Slippy update is one of those updates, which was actually for Smash Bros. Slippy totally killed my motivation for Grand Blue Versus, which is sad because I really enjoyed Catalina and was looking forward to learn Zoe, but it's delay-based netcode. One thing I really want to point out is that this is not a video to slam games that don't have rollback netcode. Although the technology's been out for a long time, there are pros and cons. I think overwhelmingly, the majority believes that they're all pros, but just as a visual experience, when you watch a game running in rollback, it can look a little teleporty and juddery. So personally, I prefer rollback netcode, but there are, let's be fair, arguments both ways. The good news is that Japan is kind of coming around to the idea of rollback netcode, and so a lot of games are being retrofitted with rollback netcode, and games like Guilty Gear Strive coming out next year has already been confirmed to be running rollback netcode. So that's a brand new game coming out from Japan with rollback netcode, which is kind of uncommon. So the point I really want to make is we're not slamming games. The point is just that we love these games, and even though we love them so much, purely because of netcode, we're willing to leave them and play something else. Pretty much all the games that you're going to see on these tweets are games that people love, and mostly because the offline experience is fantastic. They love the game to bits. Dragon Ball FighterZ, Smash Online, Dead or Alive 6, Street Fighter 5, King of Fighters 13 or 14, Soul Calibur 6, Smash Bros. Ultimate, really lacking with its offline content, so it made sense to play it online more. But it just didn't work well at all when the game came out and dropped it within a month. That's a shame. I don't know if I agree with the lack of offline content. I feel like Smash Bros. Ultimate has tons of stuff that you can do offline. But the core of the game really is the player versus player experiences, and if you can't play that online, and there are versions of Smash which are running with rollback now, even if they're kind of unofficial, it really hurts to not be able to play the game that is the current version, you know, the one that's being run in tournaments and being monetarily supported. Or can you win money? I remember at Evo Japan, someone got like a controller, which they dropped on the floor. Or maybe that was Tokyo Game Show. Can't remember. Street Fighter 5. Oh my god, that netcode is really bad, and I can't play as well as Skullgirls. I quit for that reason. I love the game, but the online about the game is trash. For that reason, I quit it. So again, another person who is openly saying and stating that they love the game. It's just that the netcode is it's a barrier between them and the game that they've already decided that they love. They just can't get past this barrier. And it's such a shame because how many other games are like this that are like missing out on the tender, loving attention that people want to give them but can't, purely because the game online experience, people know that it's better elsewhere. Uni, yeah, vote for Under Night In-Birth here, woohoo! Upvote this. I've only played Uni on Parsec with a friend, never touched online yet, but I've heard it can be pretty bad. Now, in my personal experience, because I've been getting into Under Night In-Birth recently a lot, yes, it's delay-based netcode, and so it doesn't feel great online, but I'm not that good at the game yet. Like, I really am a beginner in the game, so I haven't even noticed a lot of the really bad stuff about the netcode, but I have also heard that the netcode's not that great. Personally, at a beginner level, because I'm not doing very long combos anyway, there's like fewer opportunities for me to actually notice when the netcode is dropping inputs and that sort of thing. But there is talk here about Parsec, which is another technology that you may have heard of, where people sometimes set up a computer, like a cloud computer, in between the two players, and then the inputs still run delay netcode, but at least they're going to one computer in the middle and then coming back, as opposed to both computers sending inputs to each other like this. So it irons out a few things, but again, it doesn't really fix everything. Now this one's interesting. What hurts me more than netcode is lack of cross-platform. As a PC user, the lack of it makes it difficult if the PC scene on the game is dead. This is a big one for PS5 because the next generation is coming out. Looking at PS5, we're looking at Xbox Series X, and probably that's going to affect the quality of the games that are now being ported over to Steam in the future as well. But that's only 3 platforms. Fighting has also come out on the Switch, so we're talking about PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, Steam, and Nintendo Switch. And if we don't have crossplay, then it's like, what if around the world there's only really 150 people playing simultaneously? So you break that 150 into the different regions because you want to play with only people from the Asia region or the North America region, because obviously you want to have as little delay as possible. But then in addition to that, that means that say you've only got 35 people playing your game in Japan. That means that even within Japan, you're going to have to break those 35 people or so into the Switch version, the PC version, and the PS5 version or PS4, what have you. So now you're looking at a fighting game that's trying to run a ranked system with only like 10 to 15 people on your platform. This one's quite painful because we know that cross-platform is possible because we've seen it in other games like Power Rangers. And the one that's going to keep coming back is the one that's got cross-platform play and rollback netcode, and that game is Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, which is a lot of fun actually. I played that in a video previously. GB Versus is painful to play online. Unlike Smash, nobody really plays it anymore. Seeing a lot of mention of Grand Blue Fantasy Versus in here. Street Fighter V, King of Fighters 2000 UM back in the Xbox 360 days. I was amazed and frustrated of how I got destroyed by other players who could do long and complicated combos with those massive amounts of lag. Actually, that's been happening to me a lot in Under Night In-Birth. I've been playing it and it's delay-based netcode, and even though I'm playing people from way off in America, so our ping is probably like between 200 and 300 milliseconds. Some of these people are so used to the delay netcode, they're pulling off some crazy combos that I would not have expected to be possible in delay netcode. It used to be Tekken, but the recent news might bring me back. There are some games that are retrofitting their netcode with rollback, or even if they had rollback before, they're kind of fixing it. Another thing I really want to stress is please don't harass developers and publishers about this. They know that we want it. They've already talked about it at the Japan fighting game developers roundtable. Like, if you want to tweet it out randomly on your account, that's fine, but don't mention people because they already know that this is something that we want. There's no need to harass them daily about it, because can you imagine if 4,000 fighting gamers on Twitter were mentioning you every single day about the same thing? It's like, be considerate. Plus, games like Tekken are doing their best to retrofit it back in. We know that the developer of Under Night In-Birth, they haven't got a confirmation yet, but we know that they're working on it. You know, SNK has been retrofitting a bunch of their older titles with rollback. Now here's someone who doesn't even know what netcode is, and that's absolutely fine. Because I think if you look it up on Google, the word doesn't really exist or lead to any specific definition. But within fighting games, it's fairly well known. At least now. Anyway, I just replied to this person and told them it's not a dumb question to not understand what netcode is. All you really need to know is there are ways to make online games feel a little closer, or a lot closer to feeling like they do offline. Might never be perfect, but rollback definitely, in my opinion, is the preferable choice. Another vote for Uniclear. I love this game so much. I'm so into it right now. I really hope the devs can come through with a rollback update. I really do feel like Under Night In-Birth is one of those games that would see some serious momentum if it really did get a rollback update. Tekken 7 and Soul Calibur 6. Playing online feels like you want to headbutt your monitor. Honestly, I feel like doing that most of the time, even when I'm not playing online. Under Night and Grand Blue. Smash Online, it's only fun offline. Samsho and Dragon Ball Fighters, Under Night and Samsho 2019, and Grand Blue versus... This one's kind of mean. Lag Fighter 5. Novel's just dropped the gauntlet. All of them. Fair enough. I mean, honestly, I felt that way many times during the course of this year. I was like, well, I play like 8 or 9 fighting games, and 7 of them have netcode, which just makes them feel like garbage to play online. I may as well just stick with the only 2 that have rollback. But while I do feel that way, partially I feel like it's still okay to support a game even if it runs delayed-based netcode, especially in the case of Under Night, because we know that the developers actually tried rollback netcode in games like Skullgirls, and we know that they want to implement it. But if we completely boycott the game, then when they talk to their publisher, they're like, hey, we want to implement rollback netcode in our game, they'll be like, yeah, well, we would give you money, but no one is playing your game at all. It's just like, Catch-22, it's like, but that's because we don't have rollback netcode. So it's like, do we boycott the game until they put rollback netcode in the game, or do we support the delay version and show how much we like the game, but at the risk of the publisher thinking that we're okay with delay-based netcode? The conundrums. The most recent iteration of Samsho between the netcode and the god-awful lobby system, I just couldn't, and Soul Calibur 6. Dragon Ball Fighters, Tekken 7, until now. There was a recent update, it came out like last night. Soul Calibur 6, Guilty Gear Xrd, Samsho, loved all of them, but the netcode made it unbearable. Under Night, Xrd, Street Fighter V. Under Night, it actually is one of the most fun fighting games I've played, but the lackluster netcode made finding a decent connection a struggle, so I decided to play other games. Now let's remember, it's not even just whether you're a pro player or a casual player, but the lack of decent online netcode with solutions like rollback, it also affects the ability to run a tournament online. Now, the tournaments I've seen, especially with Arc Revo Japan, they were showing BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, they were showing Guilty Gear, Under Night In-Birth, and I think they were showing BlazBlue Central Fiction as well. I've been watching the VODs from that tournament, and it's a lot of fun watching them talk. Even though the players aren't there in person, an online tournament can be a lot of fun to watch. But I have seen some online tournaments recently where they just spend half the time wondering who's running on Wi-Fi, who's on a power line adapter, and who's, suffering the most from delay netcode eating inputs. And it's just like, is it even worth running this tournament if we have no idea who's just suffering as a result of one-sided rollback, which is because of a poor implementation of rollback, which didn't quite work, instead of just using the rollback that we already know works. It's so frustrating. Listen, I could go through these replies until the end of time, but I think you're starting to see a little pattern here. A lot of your favorite games that you've been enjoying watching in offline tournaments for years, people are just having to drop them, especially because of the pandemic. And you can't just say, okay, give up on the pandemic and go back to tournaments, because there's a massive health risk associated with that. So I think accepting that online is a really important part of keeping fighting game culture alive is a really important step going forward into 2021. Because even if we come up with a vaccine, I think a large amount of life is not going to go back to exactly how it was before. Because if there are complications like the coronavirus pandemic again, just think about the number of people who have already struggled this year with having to cancel a tournament, which means cancel hotel bookings, which means canceling a venue, which must have cost thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to book. Maybe even more, hundreds of thousands, who knows? There are probably a large number of tournaments that have been running for years and years, which going into 2021, people are going to be a little bit scared about taking that risk again. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the quote tweets as well, purely because I just don't have enough time, but there's hundreds of them if you want to check them out on Twitter. Tekken 7 opened my eyes to how bad delay-based netcode is, legit made me ask my mom to upgrade our plan without understanding the true issue. At least if there's been one positive thing to come out of 2020 for fighting games, it's that the discussion went from being something that we just annoyed people with because people didn't want to hear about it. This is like, oh, shut up about netcode. It doesn't even matter. I think as a result of what's happened in 2020, I think a larger number of people have been encouraged to think about netcode and talk about netcode more openly than they were before. And hopefully as a result, there will be less misinformation and misunderstanding about how important netcode is. And hopefully there will be fewer people who end up spending loads of extra money on just getting faster internet, thinking that that was the problem, when really that doesn't matter how fast your internet. If the game you play is running on old-fashioned netcode, buying expensive fast internet's not gonna fix it at all. KOF 2002 UM, I played it on Xbox 360, but I bought it on Steam to see if the thing was better. What a mistake. Fortunately, a better future is on the way. The future is now. I just hope the game still has people by then. I think King of Fighters 2002 has a bright future, mainly because we already know that a King of Fighters 15 is on its way. We haven't really got any information apart from the name and title of the game. But with Guilty Gear coming out next year, it's really great that they're retrofitting rollback netcode into Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus R, because everyone who likes Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus R, you can be pretty sure that they're going to buy the new Guilty Gear that comes out next year as well and play that. So they're really fostering the player base and building them up and getting them ready for the next game that comes out next year. And King of Fighters 2002, if you're a fan of SNK games, we got Garo Mark of the Wolves has rollback, Last Blade 2 also got rollback this year, and KF 2002, the beta has pretty much just ended, which means that hopefully they'll be releasing the public release of the game. And from what I played, it was very enjoyable. So not only is it a game that I've always wanted to learn more about, but with King of Fighters 15 on the horizon, again, who knows, maybe it'll be start of next year or end of next year, or maybe even later than that. We know that King of Fighters 15 is coming, and it's great that SNK is thinking about the player base that might be interested in King of Fighters 15, and that, you know, it's a worthy investment, putting rollback in your older games, because that's the power of a franchise, and I spoke about it in a previous video actually quite recently. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there for today. I hope this has been a fun little video for you to check out and see people's opinions on which games that, even though they love them, they had to quit them purely because of netcode. So this is not an attempt to bash a company. If anything, it's the opposite. I just want to show everyone how much love there is for these games. And it's, you know, people have been playing these games for years offline at tournaments and casual events, just in their living rooms with their brothers and sisters, just having fun. I just wanted to showcase how many games are missing out on potential success if they had the ability to implement rollback. And let's remember, it costs money and it takes a lot of time, and with some games it's just plain difficult in terms of programming. But for the ones that can implement better netcode into their games, especially rollback netcode, I think you can see here that there is so much love for these games and people would rather be playing them, these games that they love. It's just purely because of netcode that they're unable to. It's such a shame. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know if you enjoyed this style of video. I've never done this before, but asking people for their opinions on Twitter is always good fun because you get some crazy responses sometimes. But it's also good to hear the voice of the fans and just the communities surrounding these games as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I just want to leave you with one final thing. Please don't harass developers or publishers about this. They already know, and it's been a very big topic in 2020. If you want to voice every now and then on Twitter, you want to say, I love rollback and all hail rollback and let's bring rollback into more games, totally fine. But don't mention people and don't send them private messages, and harassment is not going to help. But one thing you can do is play the games that do have rollback netcode. So all the companies that have been retrofitting their old games, like King of Fighters 2002 or Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus R coming out soon, with rollback, or games like Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, which already has rollback, or Them's Fightin' Herds, which came out with excellent online netcode. It's kind of like leading by example, and if you make YouTube videos showing people how much fun it is to play and commenting about your experience and how it feels and how much better it feels and how much closer it gets to at least trying to mimic the offline experience, you can lead by example. Go out there, make a video, put it on Twitter, put it on YouTube, and be positive about the changes that are being made to the games that you know and love. And if you want to take part in some of these Twitter discussions, feel free to follow me on Twitter. The link is in the description below. I'll see you next time.